Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing the GTX 1060 3GB using very high texture quality, trying to be over the 3 gigs of VRAM limit, because many people ask me what happens if I go over the limit, because there's a 6 gigs version and a 3 gigs version. The GTX 1060 3GB, it's not only a 1060 with less memory, it's a slightly worse GPU. Yeah, you're getting half the memory, but you're also getting 8 to 10% less performance. So to quickly sum up, you're getting 8 to 10% less FPS, and you have to use lower texture quality. And in this video I'm going to talk to you on each of the games that I'm testing, excepting on the last ones, because on some of the games it didn't make much of a difference. So first of all, Forza Horizon 3. This one was the worst so far. I got into the game, there was a ton of frame time spikes, so the game felt very inconsistent despite running at over 50 frames per second. And well, you'll see the VRAM usage is at 3GB, the RAM usage is rising very close to 8GB, and once it hits 8GB of system RAM usage, the game crashes each time just directly to the desktop, and the game lets us know that we have very low memory, talking about the VRAM and all that kind of stuff. On Forza Motorsport 7 the same happens, so be aware of that. Lowering texture quality in this game is crucial, and since this game relies a ton on that, it also lowers the frame rate. So if you have more VRAM in this specific case, you get a higher frame rate, which is always good to know. And on Rise of the Tomb Raider I use high settings, but I just changed the texture quality to very high to be over the 3 gigs of VRAM usage once again. And you'll notice that the game stutters a bit and then stays at around 30 to 40 frames per second. I'll just lower the texture quality from very high to medium, and this game in real time changes the texture quality, so you can see in real time how the performance changes. We go from 3 gigs of usage on the VRAM and 8GB of RAM usage to start lowering the VRAM usage and the RAM usage as well, and we get around a 10 FPS boost. We go over 50 frames per second, which is a great improvement. So yeah, this game uses a ton of VRAM, we don't have enough, so to compensate the system tries to use RAM, so it won't be the same. That's why we're getting worse performance, and it also fills all the available system RAM, which doesn't help at all, and that's why lowering the texture quality in this case helps, because we don't go over the VRAM limit. And I'll talk to you again in the next game.
Laura, I'm sorry if Sophia was less than welcoming.
I understand. I'm just glad you were there to vouch for me.
My people have spent decades fighting outside.
Now I'm testing Resident Evil 7. This is another game that uses a ton of VRAM, and that's due to two options. First of all, the texture quality, as usual. There's also an option called Shadow Cache that also uses a ton of VRAM. In order to be affected by the high VRAM usage, you have to be in the second part of the house, not the first house, the second one, after a boss fight in a garage. Once you're out of that and go into the big house, you'll be getting random stutter while going through certain parts of the house. You'll notice that in the gameplay I'm showing you here. Sometimes when turning right or left into new places that I didn't visit, there's a big stutter. Some people told me about that in the past, so I had to show it here so other people can know. This is due to the VRAM, and you'll notice once again when the VRAM is very high that the RAM usage starts rising. That's because the system is trying to compensate for the lack of VRAM. So yeah, to fix this one, once again lower the texture quality to medium, turn off the Shadow Cache, and it will be totally fine.
Heck of a thing, ain't it? Sure shit beats the hell out of dying. My little girl has given us a gift. And this gift is with me always. As you can see,
now I'm testing Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, and I'm testing this one because it uses a ton of VRAM since day one. You have an ultra textures option, and I use that texture option with the high settings, since if we go over high settings, some options just wreck performance no matter what, so I try to be more realistic with the settings to choose. And while this game already stutters no matter what, I had this problem on many of my PCs. It uses a ton of CPU. You'll see at the i3-8100 is a limitation as well, but this is a smaller area in the game compared to the other parts of the city, so this is the place where I get the less stutter in the whole game. And you'll notice once again the VRAM usage is very high, the RAM usage starts rising, and in this case lowering the textures won't be a massive difference, it will just be less stutter than usual. The game by itself already has stuttering problems, so in this case you'll just get less stutter overall by lowering the texture quality, but since we're not using all the system RAM here, it's not a catastrophic difference like on Rise of the Tomb Raider. I'll talk to you again in the next game.
Shoot double guys. Bomb attacks. Any idea what today's take is?
try to look professional.
Mějte na paměti, že předměty týkající se augmentací, například biobaterie a jisté nástroje či další autorské příslušenství, mohou být během namátkových kontrol zabaveny. Děkujeme za spolupráci.
Now I'm testing Playerunknown's Battlegrounds, and this one is being fixed as of right now. I noticed major differences in the VRAM usage. When it was first released, I remember that it uses like 6 gigs of VRAM or more if we were using the ultra textures. I noticed that the game was hitting 3 gigs of VRAM in some parts of the first map, but it doesn't destroy the performance. You will notice it when you land. After a couple seconds the game stops stuttering, but the main difference I saw between having textures on ultra and on medium was that when we had ultra textures enabled, the game stutters less often. So sometimes when you're just running around you get a massive stutter, then the game continues like nothing happened. So I'll still use medium or high textures in this case, because maybe the stutter just happens to come around when you're in the middle of a gunfight or something like that, which won't be convenient at all if you're trying to just not die, which is good advice in my opinion. And while the other games that are coming after PUBG, they didn't have a huge performance difference between using the highest textures and the minimum. And well, I'll jump straight into the conclusion now. In the options menu, those games say that if you use the maximum quality textures, that you need like 5 GB of VRAM or 4 GB of VRAM. And maybe that's true, but when I'm using the maximum texture quality settings, we use between 2.5 GB to 3 GB of VRAM. And when we hit 3 GB like on the previous games, you'll clearly notice that the RAM usage will start being higher. Well, that's because when there's not enough VRAM, the system will try to compensate using your system RAM. So for example, if you have 8 GB of RAM, maybe in some games that use a lot of system RAM, if you don't have enough VRAM as well, you might not be able to play comfortably, because when the system tries to compensate the lack of VRAM using system RAM, it will just feel the system RAM usage as well. And then what happens is the same as on Forza Horizon 3, the game crashes or something weird happens, maybe very low FPS. It won't be fixed by having more system RAM. It definitely helps to compensate a little bit, but if you're talking a game that uses like more than 6 GB of VRAM and you have 3 gigs, in some cases it can be a very big impact on your game experience, like on Forza Horizon 3, but that's a game that uses a ton of VRAM by default. But if I had 16 GB of RAM on Forza Horizon 3, maybe the game would crash later on in the middle of a race or something like that, plus extra stutter, because the system RAM acting as VRAM is much slower. The things that can happen if you don't have enough VRAM is that the game crashes if there's not enough system RAM to compensate. The game might just get slower like Rise of the Tomb Raider until you lower the VRAM usage, or it might happen like on Resident Evil 7, that there are some stutters every now and then. It happens on Playerunknown's Battlegrounds as well. In most cases, I would just expect a lot more stutters in the game, and in some special cases like Forza Horizon 3, where there's a ton of VRAM usage, you might be going into crashes or something like that. But yeah, my recommendation, if you don't have enough VRAM, just lower the texture quality and that's it. In the future, it can be a problem if there's a game that doesn't have a texture quality option or a proper texture quality option, because in that case, you'll be stuck with a certain texture quality that uses more than the VRAM that you have. But there are a few games where that happens and it wasn't a big deal because they're usually console ports, and in most cases those don't use that much VRAM. For example, Neo or The Evil Within 2, those games don't have texture quality options but use more than 2 gigs of VRAM, as an example. So yeah guys, that was the experiment. A lot of people asked me in the past what happened if I don't have enough VRAM or something like that. Well, it can vary, as you saw in this video, depending on the game and how it uses resources. I hope you find this useful. Thank you for watching and see you next time.
One friendly operator remaining. Op 4, last operator standing.
Frag out. Get some.
Engaging.
Enciende el carajo. Agarraron a la persona que no debía. Exijo que me saquen ahora mismo de aquí, bestias.
That's it, we're clear.
Todavía no estamos a salvo. Pero Dios le pagará esto que ha hecho por mí. ¿Qué pensará?
Are you Amaru? What's left of him anyway? Come on, we're getting you out of here.
I got it. I'll fly.
Where are you taking me?
Back to your friends.
Entonces Pacatari has made his deal with the malditos extranjeros, the young fool.
Take it up with him, senor. Ready? Open fire.
Copy that. Roger that.
More Grand Guard soldiers. Lapdogs for the Duke.
Oh, I hate this wall. Itches like mad. Why can't I wear my regular clothes?
Chasing monsters in the brine, dancing hagfish on the line. I told
The
Mr.
carriage rails are electrified.
Rarely.
I wonder who that was.
Where did you go?
Addermire Station. This should take me out to the Institute.
H-I-J-K elemental Q arrest U-N-V double V X Y Z. Got my A's and Z's. Tell me what you think of me.
I'll be damned. No way! Bad move!
There's a shot. Something unsavory going on.
Just let us see.
Someone suspicious.
What was it?